Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 162 of So What's Been Happening. Tonight it is Tuesday, the 19th of November, 2024. Time's ticking on quickly. It wasn't long ago that we hit episode 150. We're cruising along into heading towards 200 rapidly now, which is great. So many great bands and artists, and also people of all types and jobs. We've been speaking mental health recently. We've been doing all sorts of things in amongst these chats. So it's been great to connect to so many artists along the way. And once again, thanks to Chris Familton for connecting Roderick Smith and I in our chat with about North Arm tonight. So let's bring up the great man. Welcome to the show, Roderick Smith.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Look forward to spending a little time with you tonight, chatting about a new album, fourth album. Exciting time to keep bringing out music.
Yeah. I don't know. I just seem to never grow out of the whole writing songs thing, and so I tend to like to release albums every couple of years. But so this is number 4. Can't believe it.
Yeah. What? Just tell me the first album. When was it released?
I think that was 2014.
Okay.
North Arm self-titled record came out. Before that, I think it was 2013. I released an EP just with a few songs from that album. But that was sort of how I got started. Working on my own material, and so I have released music, every couple of years since then.
Beautiful. And have you found the path of releasing music in today's world in 2024 a challenge? How do you get cut through in today's world?
Look, it's very difficult on the one hand, and then on the other hand, it's really quite easy. So,
which bit comes easy to you in your
mind? I think what comes easy is, making music feels very natural to me. So, the process of writing and recording music I find really quite gratifying. And, I really enjoy the collaboration that I have with Robin Waters, who I work predominantly with, but also Jay Walker from Machine Translations, who, put some stuff down on some of our songs. And, I've worked with those guys my entire kind of North Arm career, really. Jay Walker mixed my first record, and Robin has been working with me since Let Love Through, which was a sophomore record, then through Bring the Daylight, and then now Stay Young. So, the writing process is quite easy in a way for me, quite a release in terms of, from the day to day. And I find it a bit difficult to get cut through, as you say, from time to time. You never know when something's gonna really strike with people, strike a chord, so to speak. And I've had various levels of kind of reach or success, in inverted commas, in kind of finding an audience. So in a lot of ways, I guess I like the process of practicing. So that means that I'll always be having shots at goal, and you never know what'll come out of it. But I guess what's also easy is to kind of find that audience in a way. You've got more channels that you can exploit to try and get into as many ears as possible. And but of course, the traditional business model of music and the music industry is completely changed now from when I was a kid, started listening to music. It was always one of those things where it was quite famous, how well Nirvana was doing, in the charts, and what that meant in terms of, financial reward or whatever. But I guess I've come from the same school as those guys. I don't really care about that sort of stuff. I more care about making good music and just hanging out with my friends.
Yeah, well, I think that's a perfect way to look at it. there's very much a lot of comparisons in today's world, and it's good that you don't go there. If you can, and it's kind of stay in your lane and do what you do. And 3 albums into a fourth now, there must be something that's keeping you pushing music out, and an inspiration, no doubt. But just tell me, what have you been listening to lately? Is there kind of something you can give us, either an artist or someone you've come across that is kind of really influencing you, or you just like the feel and sound of at the moment?
Yeah, wow, good question. Straight off the bat, thrown off balance, because I've sort of been listening to heaps and then not much,
Sure.
I guess let me just touch on perhaps some of the more kind of popular stuff that I'd be listening to. I've really been enjoying that second Brat album by Charlie XCX. I think it's just so interesting how, she's reinvented that album with collaborations, and I've just been really impressed with how daring I think that really is, in terms of the story of the album, and the set and the soundscape that sort of second remix album kind of creates, which is so varied and diverse. And I think in a lot of ways that's the sort of music that I'm listening to, is the sort of stuff that feels a little bit put together, sometimes in a little bit of a rush, sometimes like phone recordings, and then all sorts of things can kind of happen in a song, and, heaps of different production techniques that are kind of like fundamentally kind of hi-fi and lo-fi at the same time. So my ear is generally bent towards that type of stuff. I'll try and dig up a good reference for that. But I think also I've been really impressed with the new Fontaines DC record. I think when I heard that song Favorite, it just took me to a really kind of familiar place. The sorts of music that I write is very kind of like nostalgic, kind of puts you in that kind of happy, sad space, kind of puts you in that kind of comfort zone around family and friends, and all of those good times and authentic times. So, I felt like that song really, really struck me hard. And then listening to the full record, Bug is such an impressive song. Great film clip. And then, I think, some of the kind of new aesthetic that the Fontaines DC guys are kind of getting into is really interesting. It's kind of really, thrown me off balance. Here I was thinking that they were sort of a dark, broody kind of, somewhat, stylized kind of band, but they were moving in that direction, but then they've just totally come out, with a completely different, fresh look and fresh kind of sound in many ways. And so, yeah, that's really been floating my boat.
Could we expect that from a North Arm album in the future, a whole new direction?
It's actually interesting you should ask, because I don't know, somebody said it once that you always celebrate the noun with the verb. So I'm already back in the studio with Robin, and we're working on like the 5th record. So, and in some respects, I guess, with some of those influences that I mentioned there, which by no means are influences that are guiding the light or the way. They're just things that are kind of like, running past me, in the kind of Spotify / streaming kind of alphabet that comes through. But basically, these songs are a lot lighter. They have kind of less, I suppose, less, I guess, kind of yearning, and kind of more like a bright, fresh, quite upbeat sound to them, with a heavy beat element. Mixing kind of my old Cassia tone that my dad bought from Cash Converters for me just recently, has a pretty gnarly kind of drum box in it. And I've just been kind of cutting that up and then mixing that with live beats with Robin, and kind of getting a bit of kind of getting into synthesizers again, taking some some of the best kind of moments from LCD Sound System, and seeing if you can kind of push that into a North Arm kind of shape. So yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to putting out new music, and I'm really excited by the new stuff. So apologies, I don't mean to get too deep into that, given that, you know, we're still talking about Stay Young, which I absolutely have enjoyed every moment making this record.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're inspired to now keep pushing now, get one out now, and that's kind of on the back of all the headaches we've had the last few years, that this album's up and going now. And you're inspired to get back, you know, really in amongst it again, which is really nice. So I suppose we should touch on Your Attention first, which is the first song on the album, Stay Young. We'll play a bit of that so people know who they're listening to. Here's a bit of North Arm with Your Attention.
Yesterday I was sailing over sea and sand. I was seeking a village in the lands of my hand. What you see is a habitat to the left of stage, waiting for the moment that I'm not to blame. It's for me to cut you there, it's for me to walk through it. It's a little hard to forget, to keep holding on to your attention. I was reaching a clearing, calling you by name. You were sitting among them, in a soft voice you said, it's for me to cut you there, it's for me to make it work. It's a little hard to forget, to keep holding on to your attention. It's a little
Beautifully done there. It's a nice, easy listen, that one. I can, yeah, it's there's so many levels to that song too, though, but it's beautifully put together.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, the one thing you can always count on with North Arm, of course, is just how many layers we love to just drop into things.
Yep. How does that what's the challenge of making that into a live set then?
Well, almost insurmountable to do it, entirely justice, which is why, I guess, you'll probably see me kind of playing more solo, kind of bringing the essence of the song to the, to the stage, rather than necessarily trying to put on the grand performance. But geez, it'd be nice one day to get the full suite of players and just try and recreate that record sound on stage. It'd be massive. Be really good.
Yeah. Is there one artist in particular? We talk about collaboration before, collaboration on albums. Is there one kind of artist that it could be anyone in the world, living or dead, that you'd like to bring in to be part of the North Arm dream one day? Or obviously, it may not be able to happen if you choose someone that's passed away, obviously, but I'd just someone else that's really inspired you, or you've loved and you've just gone, oh, that'd be amazing to have been on a North Arm album.
Oh wow.
I've widened the net there, I know.
Yeah, you have. No, that's all right. Gosh, take your pick. It's almost like, who to invite to the dinner party.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know. I think I would love to. I'd really love to. In terms of like artists that I've seen recently from Australia, for example, I really love Armlock. I'd love to collaborate with those guys on stuff once. I really love what he does with the band Phoebe Go, for example. Just really has a unique kind of sound and what have you. And there'd be others that I could name. From history. I often have dreams where I'm like meeting some of those past stars of my kind of youth, and I always wake up pretty kind of like, oh damn, that didn't happen. That would have been awesome.
Absolutely. But, so if it was one of those Your Attention jam sesh, you're putting together this live thing and you're layering it up.
Yeah.
Who else would you like to throw in there?
Well, obviously, you'd have Jay Walker and Robin in there. Robin would be on keys, Jay Walker would be on the strings. I reckon, it'd be nice to have, George Harrison on the mandolin, as you could hear some mandolin there.
Yeah.
I think, definitely having a percussion, someone really amazing from percussion, like Brie Van Ryck or something, someone quite interesting, kind of bringing kind of an art rock sound to it.
Sure.
I mean, having Bon Iver on BVs would be pretty sweet. The list goes on. I guess I draw from a lot of different influences. And I mean, in particular, Your Attention is kind of a song where I just wanted to really kind of come in with something that was a bit of a slacker kind of sound, with the guitar kind of takes you to that sort of lazy place. And kind of see what kind of unfolds from there. And as it turned out, it ended up going in these kind of interesting kind of Sufjan Stevens-y types of directions, which I really loved. When Robin kind of came up with that vocal idea, he was like, oh, I don't really think I like it, at the end, with sort of the choral stuff. And I was like, no, that's great. That's got to stay. Yeah. But yeah, so you'll find that a lot of our songs are quite layered, because we love that kind of happy accident that can happen between the original songwriting, which I do at home in my home studio here, and then when we take it down to the studio in Melbourne, we'll put the overdubs on, and then things will sort of start to really kind of open up, and the stakes get are raised higher, and then Robin and I get to a point where like, oh, I don't know what else we could possibly do So we send it to Jay Walker, and he just like ends up doing something cool with it. I mean, he did a lot of electronics on this album and some beautiful strings. So it was a really nice kind of I don't know, kind of, it was a nice, we baked a nice cake.
Yeah, absolutely. Has that been the magic of the North Arm kind of ingredients, I guess you'd say, over the last few albums? Or, is anything changed up in the way you've done things for this album?
Look, I think the only thing that's changed, certainly not the process. The process remains the same, and it seems to be a formula that works for us.
Yep.
But I think the only thing that has changed is that I've just leveled up a bit of equipment, that I use here in the home studio. So, it just means that I'm taking things down to Robin that are, a little bit more polished, and then that just sort of provides a bit more of a sound, a sort of a more solid platform from which to build. But having said that, like, you'll find that there's piano, for example, on this record, which I just took with my iPhone. Just rest my iPhone up on the place where you rest your music sheets, and just hit record, and then just see what happens on the piano. And I like to take those into the studio and just sort of see, just how far you can take some of those kind of field recordings or home recordings, just using really kind of available technology.
Sure. Almost has that mixtapey kind of vibe with lots of things going on at the same level, and then just trying to find that harmony and balance in amongst it.
I've always loved listening to records in headphones, and ever since I remember, I think the time that really blew me away was when I listened to first kind of came onto the Eraser by Tom York, and it just had so many different things happening and panned in different ways. I mean, unsurprisingly, Tom York just has so much more space in the kind of solo stuff that he does compared to what I'm doing, but and obviously, like, miles more talent, if I can be humble there, but like. Sure. But like, I guess ever since that, it just really inspired me to kind of see where you can take soundscapes, and how to kind of delight the listener into, and have them kind of go on a bit of a journey with the song as it kind of builds and morphs.
Yep. Well, this was the little title, or that cover for Everything You. Let's move on to Stay Young. And just before we touch on the song, Stay Young's a pretty relevant term. We'd all love to be, but this album and this cover is a beautiful reflection of a turn back into time, kind of nostalgia. Just tell me a little bit about growing up for Roderick Smith. Where'd you grow up, and what kind of music was playing back in the day at home, I guess you'd say?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, most memorably, so I grew up in Newcastle, in New South Wales, and Rod Smith growing up, he was pretty lucky guy, a beautiful big family, great folks, really supportive parents, and wonderful siblings. And I grew up as sort of almost a middle child to the four kids, and so I was the third youngest, and so I have two older sisters and a younger brother, and our ages are really quite spaced. So my it's funny you should ask what we were listening to, what young Rod Smith was listening to. Well, we were fortunate enough to be able to go up to North Arm Cove for holidays, which is sort of a sleepy, underdeveloped kind of part of Port Stephens, which is sort of 45 minutes north of Newcastle. Yep. And, we'd go there, and, my dad and his mates would go fishing, and, we'd just be hanging out doing sort of water sports and dinghies and stuff. And on the radio there, it would be, a mix of like whatever my elder sister was listening to, which is probably like Madonna and Wham, all the good stuff from the 80s, right? And that stuff kind of filtering into the top 40 hits, on an AM FM radio station, 2X, NX, what became NXFM, but it used to be 2NX or something. That would always be playing. So we get kind of like the best hits of the 70s, kind of, you know, power ballads, and then the 80s sort of stuff. And I think my first cassette tape was the Ghostbusters soundtrack or something. Yeah, so, you know, and then my other sister came along, and when she hit, you know, the musicy age, she was really starting to get into sort of Nirvana, and you know, really into some of the sort of 90s stuff. And then, you know, she went to London, and then kind of got into all of that sort of scene as well in the late 90s. And you know, as I was coming up, it was like I was listening to Nirvana, and then, you know, 94, 95, About Face, Oasis was the biggest thing since sliced bread. I got into the Beatles through that. And then, you know, Blur, Pulp, the whole kind of Brit pop thing was huge for me. Trip hop was huge. Beastie Boys, you know, just really diving into all of those different influences that were prevalent at the time. Bit of Smashing Pumpkins. Not really a Pearl Jam guy. No offense to Pearl Jam, who I think are here at the moment. And then yeah, you know, coming into the noughties, it was kind of very much about the Strokes. You know, all of that sort of sound, the kind of sleaze, indie sleaze stuff, but then also kind of getting into a lot of folky stuff, which was sort of, you know, your Iron and Wines, and you know, that sort of stuff that was sort of starting to come out of America. And, you know, I guess my kind of lead into that was all through Wilco, and you know, with Hotel Yankee Foxtrot. So I don't think I think I'm probably like a lot of guys who grew up, you know, who were born in like the late 70s or early 80s, coming through and being interested in music. I kind of draw that line of best fit, you know, when it comes to kind of the indie alternate scene, and kind of have really traced my way through that and traveled that road. And that all kind of then appears in North Arm. I mean, it really is just, I'm a huge fan of music and a fan of musicians, to the point where, yeah,
you can definitely tell, you know, you've experienced the cocktail of music in every form. It's incredible how many people found the Beatles really through other 90s bands at that point.
Yeah.
It being Oasis, probably one of the biggest ones that inspired me through the back collection of or to actually find out how cool the Beatles really were.
Yeah.
Me growing up listening to the Beatles was something mum and dad played, and it was something I kind of pushed away from, to be perfectly honest. And I did actually move into, I know you touched on them before, but I've just come off the back of going to 2 Pearl Jam concerts. So I suppose we agree to disagree a little bit on that one, but
Yeah,
that's okay too. And that's the magic of what music brings. Yeah, a little bit tired after last night's massive night at Marvel Stadium. Great to see a band, you know, back from the 90s, been 30 years touring Australia over the time, and, you know, and still putting out great music in my opinion. Just great to see that inspired Seattle grunge days of the 90s still very much firing, if not. And incredible. I'd always, you know, get a little pinch me moment when I see young kids at some of these gigs dragged along by their parents, or, you know, they might have the headphones on, but they're just absorbing live music. And that's an incredible moment. What was the first large scale kind of gig or concert you went to?
Yeah, I was a bit late to the party, I guess, because, you know, you could probably tell from the cover image there. You know, I was kind of like a very, very short, young-looking dude for ages. So, like, sneaking into pubs and clubs to see music, or, you know, going to certain big festivals was kind of off the cards for me.
Sure.
But in '95, I did end up going to Somersault, which I think was in Macquarie University grounds. So there, you know, was the Beastie Boys, Beck, Sonic Youth, and then I think some of those Australian bands were coming through at that time too. You know, your Regurgitators, and you know, they were just all, you know, Spiderbait and all of that sort of stuff. They were all just sort of starting to come through. and hit the kind of alternative scene. So yeah, that was the first one that I can really remember. And I think later that year I went to the big festival that's in Brisbane as well. I can't remember that one. Well, I can't remember the name of it, but Livid Festival.
Okay. Yep.
And yeah, there I saw like Morphine and, you know, other sorts of acts. So yeah, definitely a highlight for me to be able to see some of those artists on stages and have them so kind of available. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it always blew my mind to hear music live and just see the combination live that wasn't in a film clip back in the day is about the only way we really got to see how music kind of worked. There was never really behind the scenes of what happened with recordings, how things were put together. But occasionally you got little snippets of that put together in a film clip on a old sort of style or broken image that they'd kind of phase through. It was never really part of the main part of the scene, but it was always flipped through. So it was great to get a little touch on that. Potentially a live album. Could you pull that off in amongst the way you put together music?
Yeah, I mean, you probably guess, given I'm 4 records in, I probably never rule anything out. You know, I like to rule everything in. I wouldn't
different
mind doing
versions of maybe even.
Yeah. Look, all of that. I think it would be a huge indulgence to be able to kind of. One thing I would love to do is kind of hire out Jay Walker's studio down in East Gippsland and you know, just basically go in there and run the tape machine and just see what we came up with. I mean, I really love those bands like Surprise Chef, you know, who just have like old gear everywhere in a house somewhere and just kind of make me really kind of vibey kind of music in a kind of an it seems improvised, which is what I love about. I'm sure it's absolutely kind of labored over, but it sounds effortless. So yeah, definitely if not a live album, definitely an album that is recorded live to tape and is just a little bit more kind of instantaneous and less kind of, I guess, segmented in terms of process.
Yeah. Do you find yourself laboring over the songs as they come together and layer, or does, you know, that magic of it being able to sit kind of right in the pocket as some of your songs kind of do and just take you on that journey?
Less and less labored over from my perspective. I guess one thing that I learned pretty early on is the danger of not letting go at the right time. Sure. So that's why I tend to collaborate with others, is because they help you kind of bring perspective to what you are trying to achieve. And then in bringing their own selves to it, they also bring that sense of another mind and another player, which prevents you from potentially kind of running your songs into the same cul-de-sacs that you might, because you will really only have so many faculties. Do you know what I mean? In terms of songwriting. So yeah.
All right. We're going to touch on Stay Young. It's something we'd all love to do forever. But in this 100%. Case, time's ticking. So here we are with Stay Young.
Taken from somewhere where I knew it was true, and I waited for something that I wanted to do. Wake without sound, no more wake without sound. Living with nothing if not living with you, and the minutes and the seconds as the sky faded blue. Wake without sound, no more wake without sound. wig without sound. No more wig without sound. I still notice the truths and the simple explanations used to be an excuse. Wig without sound. No more wig without sound.
Yeah, I love that. Stay Young. Was that always going to be the title?
Well, for the song, it was funny. It was like when it was first written, the working title was called Day One. Because I don't know why that was the case. And then, just in the lyrical process, it was like at the end of the song, it's kind of like, no, just stay young. Like always be day one. Always, every day is day one. So, I think it was almost going to be called Stay Young in brackets Day One. In fact, that was what the record is going to be. Anyway, there are a whole range of different iterations that it went through. But no, that's really what that song's about. It has that kind of sense of kind of happy. It kind of is a real kind of release of a track. The way it comes in with that kind of New Pollution Beck kind of beat, and everything sort of just explodes into this kind of almost like a sense of kind of acceptance, which I think is part of the aging process, but also keeps you pretty young.
Sure. Oh, yeah. So that plenty of distortion in the guitar and things. It's got that feeling of a young teenager, just doing his thing in his bedroom with the door shut, and just enjoying music, and got either the new guitar or a new pedal or the new amp, and just cranked it and just play. So I just love where the lyric and the song, the vocals especially, just sit in the kind of the middle of the mix almost. I just really love that about that style.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it's really interesting because that song it kicks off quite dry, and there's not a lot of sound, and my vocals at the beginning are kind of really vulnerable, and then at the end, Robin and we're just sort of yelling "Stay Young," and it kind of sits really nicely in the mix in that kind of almost like that. It's a real 90s happy place when you can really kind of couch that vocal in and amongst the kind of cacophony of sort of heavy guitars and stuff.
Yeah, it kind of really reminds me, like I touched on the bedroom kind of idea, but also that garagey band, where the vocals aren't really clear in the band and the singer's singing, but it's just everyone's playing. You just get that magic of that. That's where I kind of, was inspired a little bit to ask you that question in relation to that live sound and live recording. I really think, be a masterpiece in amongst what you do to be able to include just even an EP, a couple of songs or redo a couple of songs to a live version would be really cool.
Yeah. Oh, well, point taken.
There you go. Put it on the list. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
No problem. It's always good to, and just thinking, while I kind of put you on the spot on that one, can you think back through the last couple of albums or even this one? Is there one particular song on Stay Young that you would you put in that live set straight away?
Oh yeah, look, definitely Stay Young. I think it's got a real vibe to it. You hit the nail on the head. There's another couple of deep cuts from the record that I'm really fond of as well. Like Sunshine 99 has a really nice kind of drum drum machine on it, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I Meant to Be is a real kind of interesting kind of alt country kind of sounding journeyman track, which I think would translate really well live. That whistle kind of is quite invoking, and would kind of I think it's a nice hook. So yeah, look, I mean, I love to play the record start to finish. It would be. I don't think there's a. I mean, this record has its sort of side alleys, but they all seem like places worth looking at.
Sure. And the sequencing or the track listing, is that something the musician or the artist labors over, or who do you hand that rein to? Do you have an initial thought of how that track listing is going to work and then ask around, or how do you go about that?
It's a good question, actually. I've been involved in records where we've labored really hard over the track listing and thought about it all sorts of different ways, and put together different lists, and that's certainly something that you will probably find bands might do. They might really kind of try and get some consensus around it. And I have myself labored over it, but oftentimes I'll ask, like there's a guy who used to play guitar in the lineup for North Arm, Sean Roach, and I always found him to be a really good bounce, when it came to sequencing of songs, because he had a real sense of like what an album sounded like, or what an album should sound like from start to finish, how that journey should be meted out. But look, it came together pretty quickly with this one. I didn't really have a lot of doubts. I always knew that, with Escapade being a instrumental, kind of wanted that to sort of be a bit of a middle section, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
kind of. And I always like to kind of, I don't know, for good or bad, I'm not sure. With streaming, people listen to music quite differently from streaming, and perhaps I'm from like the old school where I love to release a record, as a kind of a piece, an art piece. But yeah, I always like to sort of like ease people in, and then second or third track really kind of raise the stakes, and then sort of come down to something a little bit more dreamy and cool, and then then start to kind of bring in a little bit more of a beat element, and then bring people home,
Sure. Is that the same way you approach a live set as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you kind of putting the live sets that I've played in the past have generally been pretty short. I like to kind of keep people coming away feeling like they're wanting more, and not really have that sense of kind of ho-hum in the middle of a set, for example. But But yeah, you tend to try and drive the same sort of energy level throughout a live set as well.
Well, we're going to leave everyone hanging a little bit, because we're only going to play one more track out of this album, which is really cool. And we're actually, just to let people know, we're just playing these 3 songs in sequential order as they appear on the album. But there's so much gold in the rest of the other 7 songs that are sitting on this album. So please get out there and make sure you check this one out. For North Arm and Roderick Smith. It's a genius album, to be honest. I don't just say that because I'm interviewing you tonight. I'm genuinely inspired by this great album, and I listen to a lot of different music. But this is one that's kind of gripped me. To be honest, I'm new to your music, but it's definitely something that's gripped me. So I'll be digging a lot deeper.
Oh, thank you. No, that's huge and high praise. So very grateful.
Yeah, and it's probably moments like this, the magic of how this podcast got to come together, and was a boring time during COVID, just wanting to have a chat to people, reach out into the big world out there. We got sick of kind of walking around and doing the 1K walk sessions that we're about to in radius that we had in lockdown kind of Melbourne during that phase, and we understood how troubled and tough the music industry was, and most importantly, but probably really started to connect a lot more with music during that phase as well, which was a really good thing that came out of COVID. I found us so many more new bands. There was a lot more live stream stuff. So the content was kind of there, and actually found myself, listening to full albums, which I hadn't done in years. I don't think in today's world, like you touched on. We run a 15-second life. I think at the moment we get inspired by 15 seconds, let alone 15 minutes of an album. So to be able to listen, it actually feels quite long listening to even a 2 or 4 minute full track now, back in the real world again. So it's just nice to sit on a session like this with you and talk for an hour or so and just talk, and let the world revolve again. We take, I kind of touch on that. I always say to musicians that, thanking them for transporting us to a space, especially when they play live, we get a chance to get into a space like you guys do and forget about life for a while and just play your music. We get to absorb it, and that connection with a live audience, I'm sure you must love still after all these years.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I will I will confess that, I'm not the most natural live performer. I don't know what it is. There's something physiological where I tend to get the sweats, and you know what I mean, really kind of stress on the mix and everything like that. Find it somewhat difficult to kind of get out of my head, but no, there have been some. I've been very fortunate to play on some really cool bills, and play a lot of live venues and connect with a lot of people over the years via music. And I think that is why I'm still here. Like, just the sheer thrill of being able to talk to a music fan like yourself, who's motivated to put together a great platform for us to tell our story is kind of reward enough in a lot of ways. So and to hear somebody really kind of shout out the record like you have is massive. It's why we do it, and I guess in a lot of ways, it just takes, that's the sort of feedback that gives you the sense that you're on the right track and to keep going.
Have you ever found yourself in that kind of rut of music staleness, I guess you'd say, of needing something to spark you?
It's a really good question, and I used to worry about it a lot. I used to worry that perhaps I just wouldn't write songs anymore, that wouldn't be there for me. And I think for me, I've always felt happier when I got a soundtrack in my head of more or less my own making. So a lot of the songs that you'll hear from my records are the songs that are actually in my head, during that period that I was writing it, and kind of was the kind of soundscape to my life's experience at that time. And mercifully, I've never felt that sense of like staleness, or what's happening. And I think the reason why is that I no longer really worry about it anymore. I kind of have got into the rhythm of just only working in short bursts on things. And I just know that when I do sit down and I've got the energy or the spark for it, that something's going to happen. And I think that's the thing that I guess, I don't know, kind of came to me at some point. I can't explain why, but it was like, it's going to be something, and you never know where it'll go. So almost taking the decision not to do it because it won't be perfect, or it won't be exactly as you thought you wanted or envisaged for it, is no reason not to do it. That is the wrong decision. To give up on something, sure, but whatever I write always just ends up sounding like me, even though I've got my influences in writing this record. I was just super inspired by Armlock. I was Alex G, all these different artists that have that real slacker sound. I wanted to sound like them, but I only ever came out sounding like me. And it's like, so I guess it's sort of a task in kind of accepting your individuality, and then knowing that that individuality is going to bring with it sort of awkwardness, because you have to accept that you are going to create something. It may not be exactly as envisaged, but it will be something. And, if you just see it through, you'll be that much better off, I mean, at the end of the day, I think someone said yesterday poignantly, it was like, you may as well be you because everybody else is taken.
Yeah, I saw that quote actually in the last couple of days. So it's a very true quote, and I think it's a beautiful way you've touched on that the process of music for you, but really much a life journey, is something we can take out of that is, what are you afraid of trying? Just try it. And yes, just acknowledge that it's probably not going to be perfect, or there are always something you'd like to have done differently or changed. But understanding that that whole world of acceptance, I think, is the most important one that we agreed on right now, is to put your music out and inspire you to do the next one, most importantly.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't be happier. And who knows, maybe there'll be a day where I'll be like, oh, I've made all the music I want to make. And I've got nothing more to say, but it
Do you
certainly
think that
doesn't
day
feel
will
like.
come?
So, look, it may come. I mean, Your Attention is a track that's a little bit about that. It's like, how long are you going to listen to me?
Sure.
How, like, do I really have a platform to talk? Like, is it really my world, or was it ever anyway? And I don't have I don't have a right to have fans, or to have people listen. That's a privilege, not a right. So it's like, maybe I'll get to a point where I'm like, you know what, it's really is a young person's game, and I'll leave it up to the kids. And there are many discussions in the world, and many kind of ways of being in the world that I do take a conscious effort to leave to the younger guys and girls coming through who have their own, take on it. And I love that. And I love them for bringing that energy and that drive and really caring. But I don't know. On the flip side, what I would say is that, people who are kind of more mature in any industry have a place. They still, if they're still true to their craft, no matter what discipline, they still have a place to kind of demonstrate to others, their state of the world, their state of thinking, their state of being, and their musicianship or their art, their artistic nature. So yeah, I think it's a broad church. I think it any kind of artwork is for everybody and for everybody to engage in. And in a way, I kind of like being off to the side a bit, just doing my thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Not having really a lot of pressure or any at all. If anything, the pressure is only self-imposed in all circumstances. But yeah. So I like to just kind of play it low key and just get a record out every few years and just enjoy that people like yourself, who are like true fans, are kind of listening and kind of coming onto it.
Sure. So you touched on before when you were talking about as a youngster, and being inspired by music of an older generation potentially. So just keep that in mind as you go through your journey of when enough's enough. At the end of the day, it might be a new album you're putting out, but a young artist might actually pick that up. So it's amazing, these sliding doors kind of moments of who can be inspired and at what time. I think that's a great part about the electronic world and the digital world now, that it does sit on a massive information superhighway, they call it, the internet, and it does sit in a library like these podcasts do. And it's hard to believe that we're, past show 150, just talking about music and just talking about life, and the challenges of life as well. Most importantly, it's just good to talk. And just little conversations about fear and confidence and overcoming things and letting go, and being in the moment. And I think you're very much an artist that seems to be in the moment now with your recordings, which is really cool.
No, thanks, mate. Yeah, it from time to time does feel that way, but certainly there are themes that loom large for me as well. I mean, I was only attending a session from one of my old mentors just yesterday, and he was just talking about, how much fear can be a driver for action, and how to try and train yourself to slow down time between action and stimulus, so that you can kind of really be quite present in your everyday decision making. And I think that there's certainly things that I don't know, use music to kind of help to kind of hone that skill to a degree, to try and find those moments where it's all happening, and then you can kind of slow down time in a way, and then kind of keep keep things kind of moving forward, with each decision being, you know, considered and sort of made without you know, a healthy balance between, you know, rationality and impulse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fear can be very gripping and crippling at the time too if you let it get hold. So it's great to have an outlet that music is, and I always try and get to at least a couple of gigs a week to just kind of break those moments of too much thinking, I guess you'd say. And it's great to be in and around people and connecting with new artists, young artists, and also, you know, there's nothing like the magic of a live room to me. And a bill of 2 or 3 bands that largely you may not heard of 2 of them, and you're going to see one artist and get there early and connect with a new artist. Might be a solo artist that then has an album, and it's a whole band album, and it's completely not different, but layered differently to, like you just said, what we discussed about before, as you perform solo. So when can someone expect to see North Arm out there performing, or just as yourself as a solo? Have you got anything coming up?
Yeah, look, I really need to plan something, to be honest with you. At the moment, I'm in the interest, or kind of on the topic of slowing down time. You know, as I do a day job, and you know, at the moment I'm focused on getting a film clip out for the song I think you might be playing next, called Everything You. And you know, once I have that in the can, I think then it may give me the impetus to put on a few shows around the place, you know, coming into the new year. So what I'd suggest to your audience is keep an eye out, and I'll put something up. But look, sadly, I think it's challenging to put on a show that would measure up to the kind of soundscape record that you'll listen to if you listen to North Arm. But you might just catch me kind of bringing the essence and the core of those songs together with maybe 1 or 2 others in the coming month.
Well, I can tell you, you know, flashing back to you, me reading your story, dragging out an old dusty guitar in sister's cupboard at the age of 11, mate, I'd love to see you play solo. I can kind of feel it, and hear the energy, and the beautiful nature that you've got, of, like we touched on before, when you we just went backstage just before we started, and just being able to noodle and finger pick and just play, mate, that's a magic that, you know, I don't have as a talent, and I'm always in awe every time I hear a guitarist and singer do their thing. So thanks for doing what you do, most importantly. And we're going to play a bit of the last track, which is Everything You. Yep, that's the one. We're going to do that for this last song before we finish, and then when you do have the clip together, let's reconnect again, and let's do a little 10-minute session to release the clip. Maybe once you've got it up, and we'll play it across to our audience as well.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I really appreciate the support. Congratulations on the podcast, and also how many EPs you've put out, and you know, thanks for supporting artists like myself. I really appreciate it.
No worries. And we'd also like to just touch on thanking Chris Familton again. He's doing an incredible job promoting some incredible artists at the moment. How important is that for you at this time in your journey, to have a good publicist behind you, you know, pushing out that and to let you do what you do and let him do what he does?
It's essential, actually. I mean, to be honest with you, I just couldn't get around to the various places that he does in the way that he does, and I don't have those networks. You know, so it's just great to have someone. This will be the second record that I've worked with Chris on. I was so pleased with how far we were able to Bring the Daylight, which remains a really important record in my back catalogue, and I was so impressed with how we were able to cut through. Also, I did a double A side with him as well, which was awesome. Great response, and yeah, now with this one, you know, it's bringing me to your audience. And, you know, Chris is once again been able to really, you know, push into a number of channels. And I've really found that he's been able to sort of help me kind of get a lot of traction that I wouldn't have otherwise had. So yeah, I'm always grateful to him after a project, and I really enjoy working with him.
Great to hear. All right, so it's northarm@bandcamp.com. That's probably the quickest reference to finding the album. Jump on, go back through the back catalogue. We must just quickly just touch on the album cover itself. Your life, or was it you? That's the question.
Oh yeah, definitely me. Age of between 9 to 11. I probably think 9. Sitting in the Night Rider car kit. I think it was in a local shopping mall in Newcastle, because I think that car was on tour between 85 and 87 in Australia and New Zealand in the lead up to the Expo 88 in Brisbane. So I'm only talking to you fluently about it because I had to do a little bit of research for a few media spots. But yeah, look, I think it's probably around 87, 86, okay. 87.
Great. All right, and we're gonna go out tonight with Everything You. Just tell us a little bit about the song before we go off and play it, and we'll give everyone a little chance to just drift off tonight and relax for the after the show.
Sure. Everything You, I guess, you know, it really is a song about stuff that was happening in the making of the record that we'd had. Sadly, my father-in-law had passed away, and we'd also had to say goodbye to a dear family pet, and which is none of this is easy. And then compounding the two, I think, in the 1 year was just terrible. So I think it's really about kind of everything being about those moments, everything also being about my wife going through that terrible loss, which was just so heart rending, and then the two of us going through that process again. So yeah, it's just sort of playing on those themes and trying to convey that sense of everything being okay as you come through those difficult times, but you're still going to save a little bit of sadness.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to play Everything You. Thanks for joining me on episode 162. You're welcome anytime. It's been great to connect once again, and another one of those opportunities where a half an hour show ends up being an hour, just for a great chance to have a chat and connect. But I really appreciate you giving us some time on a Tuesday night when I'm sure you could be writing another song.
No, I'm going to go and watch ER. For some reason, my wife and I are watching ER for reasons unknown. I don't know. Sure. So I guess that just says how much I'm still in the 90s. But yeah, Aaron, again, thank you so much. And I hope your listeners enjoy the record, and I hope they enjoy this song.
No problem. And talk about being inspired back for the 90s. I'm off to Hoodoo Gurus tomorrow night after.
Oh, no way.
At the Forum. So one of Melbourne's greatest venues. So look forward to that.
Oh, I love that band.
All right. Thanks for joining me. Here we are with Everything You.
When I think that I'm falling through, it's everything you. And I'm looking for something new. It's everywhere you. I'm not sure if it slipped my mind, or maybe I don't have the time. Making sense of a changing day.